Paul Mason in Athens there. Well, joining me now, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, the author of Free Fall, who's advising the Greek government. Also, the day after Spanish ministers accuse speculators of a conspiracy to undermine their economy, Madrid's ambassador confronts one of them, Hugh Hendry, who has bet millions the euro will continue to depreciate. And gentlemen, thank you all very much for coming in. There's lots of counter-rumours tonight, but does Professor Stiglitz a bailout look imminent?
Well, first, let me point out, the issue isn't a bailout. A bailout is what happened with Citibank, with the financial institutions, where they couldn't, they owed more than their assets.
Well, does old Europe, does Germany and France need to get together and come in and save Greece? That's what we're talking about here.
They need to make a clear statement that they believe in social solidarity, that they will stand behind Greece. That is what is needed.
And Germany said it won't. Will it have to change its mind?
It doesn't need all of Europe, but I think it would be desirable if all of Europe did it. The basic point here is there's no problem of Greece or Spain meeting their interest payments. Even at a debt-GDP ratio of 130%, with real interest rates at 1%, 2%, that's a small fraction of GDP to meet their interest obligations.
Hugh, you're shaking your head.
Hello. Can I tell you about the real world? Greece is paying 7% on 2-year money. That's not... Let me tell you, prices are falling. In real terms, we're talking about 9%. No. What you refer to is you refer to the rate for the non-cheating countries, right? So you have fiscal probity.
This is not cheating.
If you organise your country in a sensible manner and show fiscal restraint,
they have
just let you finish.
How on earth can you possibly? Greece is a cheats charter. Greece has debt which is 107% of its GDP. It never used the good time to save money. Therefore, it finds itself compromised in the difficult economic environment of today because it spent all the money in the prosperity.
OK, and as we heard, the Greece deficit, 13% of GDP. Spain's is 11%. Does it seem like a good idea to you to bail out Greece at this point?
Well, Spain, let me say first that Spain, we have certainly a problem with the deficit, but we have low debt. We've been saving in the good times. We've been having surpluses of 2%, more than 2%, and now we have 66% of our GDP debt, which is far below the average of the Union. So we have deficit, but we needed that deficit to tackle the economic downturn.
So just briefly, do we need to see Germany, France, the big economies come in and rescue Greece? Does there have to be this?
First of all, the notion of a bailout is oxymoronic, okay? Because the presumption of a bailout is that the other countries will lend Greece money. Greece's difficulty is that the magnitude of debt is far greater than the capacity of the economy to service that debt.
So it simply couldn't work.
That's absurd. If they stand behind it, interest rates will come down. If interest rates come down, then it's easy for it to service it. If, there's a vicious circle here. If people don't believe it will service it, interest rates go up, and then there's a problem.
But what about this whole idea of austerity then? I mean, what about what Ireland's done the last 12 months? Feel the pain. This whole idea of when things go wrong, moral hazards out the window, here you go.
Well, Greece has formulated, I think, a very carefully balanced balance between social cohesion and economic restructuring. It recognizes...
But it's often defaulted. Would it stick to this kind of restructuring?
They have a new government, and that new government was elected on a platform of transparency. They changed, they discovered that there were problems in the accounting in the previous government, and it's come clean.
Hugh Hendry.
They have presented a plan. They have presented a plan, and we have to. No, they have presented a plan.
I mean, the speculators
you've got
have incentive to make people
why do you not believe
they discovered transparency. Yeah, they discovered that they had been lying for 6 years. That's the reality here. Now, listen. In Germany, the German people, they take euros. If you inspect a euro, it has a letter of the alphabet on the serial number, which tells you the issuing central bank. Germans will not own euros which are not denominated, or not issued rather, by the Bundesbank. Okay?
It is the first time I hear this.
But isn't the truth, Hugh Hendry, that if Greece defaults, hedge funds like you, make millions?
Some hedge funds make millions. Yeah, the hedge funds, speculators and independent central banks are what stands between an economy and hyperinflation. It's very hard to create inflation when you have free markets, when you have the discourse and the dissemination of information. Look what happens. You get into difficulty, and these guys over here say, hey, we don't like it. Suddenly the truth hurts. Suddenly we want to ban the truth. Suddenly speculation is a pejorative term.
We don't want to ban the truth.
So what do you want to do?
We are prepared. We admit we have a problem. We have unemployment, big problem. We have deficit. We will cut it. We've said so. We are prepared to take. We are prepared to bite the bullet and take measures.
The absurdity of these speculators is illustrated by what's happening in the United States. There are the spreads, the CDSs, the bets on a default in the U.S. government are going up. Does anybody believe that the U.S. government is going to default? The fact is, the U.S. government can print money. You can bet on whether there's inflation. But to bet on a default in the U.S. is literally absurd.
Ambassador, I want to come back to some of the comments that your own government minister, Jose Blanco, was saying. Nothing that happens in the world, including in the editorials of foreign newspapers, is casual or innocent. Does your entire government believe that this is just speculator-driven?
No. Look,
but he said those words. Nothing is innocent or casual.
What we believe is that we have some problems. We have to tackle them. We are prepared to do so. And we had yesterday our Minister of Finance here in London, his deputy. We have a plan to tackle the deficit.
Well, let me say, there are lots of speculative tax all over. And we ought to face that as a reality.
How do you think this crisis will resolve itself? This is the first big test for the euro.
First and foremost, the problem confronting not only the euro region but the world is the unprecedented volume of debt. American debt is 4 times the size of the economy, both public and private. Our Spanish,
largely by financial markets mistakes.
Okay, but we're looking at Greece tonight. We're looking at the eurozone. Yeah. How is this going to be resolved?
We need the forgiveness of debt. Greece has too much debt. It either has to default or find some form of creditor forgiveness. That's the only resolution.
What does that mean, forgiveness of debt?
Default. It means a haircut. It means banks. So
you want to see Greece tumble and the euro currency tumble?
Absolutely.
On its knees, the end of the euro?
It's not its knees. It is recognising the unsustainable debt burden.
It's absurd.
Why is that?
This about something bigger?
The euro is very strong. This is not really
Professor Stiglitz, does this just show that actually monetary union does not exist outside of political union? That's what this is proving now?
Well, there is a need for more solidarity, which is a way of saying more political cohesion.
Would you be prepared for that? Would Spain want that?
Well, I think we have to strike the right balance. We have a national problem and we have a union solidarity.
But would you want more political cohesion to help money?
Yes, we would. Certainly. We would. We will always be in favor.
I mean, I've talked about the need. When Europe was created, the euro was created, they created solidarity funds for the new entrants. But they didn't create solidarity funds to deal with problems of instability. And that's what is needed now.
And you think there's probably wry smiles from Britain now saying, thank God we're out of this.
Look at the poor Irish.
Will it affect us?
Well, absolutely, because the ECB cannot bail them out. The European Union can bail them out. Now, if Greece defaults, which it almost certainly would if the solution is imposing more debt upon them, if it defaults, the UK and the other members of the European Union, which are not in the currency, theoretically would be liable to any default that Greece would sustain.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.